So today's first news article comes from Seattle, and it says the title is the many homeless many homeless declined shelter offers by city of Seattle. New report finds the new data, it says, shows that more than half of all homeless people who were offered shelter by the city of Seattle last year did not accept the offers. According to a report by Publicola, according to the report, the data presented during the meeting of the Seattle City Council Committees on Public Assets and Homelessness last week, the city's homeless outreach and provider ecosystem, or HOPE, team referred 1,072 people to the shelter to a shelter in 2021, but less than half, 512 people accepted the offer and stayed at a shelter for at least one night. One says, we can't overrule someone's decision to decline shelter. Michael Bailey says, this deputy director of the city's Human Services Department, I always kind of wonder, why? Why can't you? You do that when you're putting somebody in jail, but okay, anyways. So he said during the meeting, but we can work with the individual to better understand their unique needs and the factors contributing to that decision. Under the city's now defunded and replacement navigation team, approximately 25% of those referred to a shelter actually took up the offer, officials said. It's hard to know exactly why, Jeff Sims, an analyst for the City of Seattle staff, said during the meeting. It could be the better matching. It could be that we're offering better shelters. Jennifer, who didn't want her last name to be published publicly, had been homeless for the past 2 years. She lived in an encampment on Seattle's Crown Hill for the past several days. She's never stayed in a shelter, and she told KOMO News on Wednesday that she'd likely never go because of the negative connotation that comes with them, the requirements and the unknowns over how long she'd get to stay, she added. Shelters have a negative connotation behind them, she said. It's always been the shelter for battered women, or a shelter for abuse, or a shelter for Alcoholics Anonymous. It's always something negative backing it, so it sounds like another rehab or another scary negative thing that we're going to feel guilty about, and people are going to look down on us. The fear of shelter also stems from being alone, Jennifer said. People out here, they group up, she said. They tent up, they camp up, so they don't want to part their fellow friends and go off by themselves somewhere scary and unknown and stay in a shelter that is not promised how long they'll be there for. So it was an interesting article, and I just got to wonder how many are homeless by choice. Now, if you listen to this article, what they're saying is that over half of the people that were referred to something just didn't go. They didn't want to go. So again, how many people are homeless by choice? Well, according to that study, half. How is it that we'll still argue that there's not enough space? Okay, they've been sending people to these shelters in the city, and people just aren't going, even when there is space. So we keep arguing about whether or not it's a space thing, and it's really what it is it's an issue of choices and choice, the choice that people make. And did you notice how fear was playing such a role in it? I mean, again, you're afraid to go into this thing that's unknown in trade for what? In trade for putting a tent up in a place where things are not necessarily safe and things are not healthy. I think that, you're just trading one fear for another, I guess. What we need is for society to speak of homelessness as the scary thing with negative connotations. Stop communicating that it is shelters that are scary and negative. And that's kind of the thing that, I mean, did you hear what Jennifer was saying here? She continually hears these scary negatives, and I'm saying, well, maybe we should stop talking about them like they're scary negatives. I mean, just talk about them like, hey, give it a shot, give it a try. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to go back to the street. That street will always be there for them. And I think that's really the scary thing. That's the negative thing. Notice that not one of the negatives she mentions has to do with the fear of being taught about Christianity. She's being offered all kinds of city things. Did you notice that they were talking about abuse shelters and women's crisis shelters and Alcoholics Anonymous shelters, but never once did she mention having religion jammed down her throat. I'm not sure where that keeps coming up in topics, but it certainly wasn't one of hers. So again, I don't know. I just think that the article was interesting, and I think that it really shows a lot about what's going on, the talk on the streets amongst the homeless, about shelters in general.